Today we're going to talk about differentiation advantage. And I think that, it's probably not surprising that differentiation is all about understanding sort of the customer in a much deeper way than you have to if you're pursuing a cost-based advantage. But it's really getting into the customer's willingness to pay. And that's really what you're trying to understand with differentiation is, what are the pain points that the customer's experiencing, and what are they willing to pay in order to make those pain points go away? Or you could think about it as, you could be, sort of pleasure or pain, depending on how you want to define. If you want to define pain broadly, you could include sort of pleasure as part of that. There are four primary ways that you can differentiate that are described in the text. So, Sam, do you remember any of those?
Yes, brand.
Brand
Is one. Cost, having a low cost.
Okay, cost would be a separate, so you got sort of differentiation and cost, and under differentiation, there are different ways you
So
can.
maybe a more generic one, a lower cost strategy.
So you could have a lower cost strategy. We think of that as a completely separate category. So you've got differentiation. So they all fall under the value proposition of unique value. You got two branches. You got differentiation, you got cost. Under differentiation, one way is brand, that you can differentiate.
Premium services is part of the product.
Okay, so somehow premium services or features.
Right, like the vacuum. That sucks.
Okay, sucks really well. Okay, you remembered that? Vacuums suck really well. Okay, so brand, features, convenience would be a third, and quality would be a fourth. So quality or reliability would be a fourth. So it's often hard to group these, but at sort of a very high level, what I found in the work that I do is, if you're trying to differentiate your product, it's usually you've got a feature, and there's these different dimensions of features. You got a feature that either does an existing job better than any other product out there. It does more jobs, or it does a unique job. And we'll sort of dig into that. It's just this just lasts longer, more reliable, better quality. It's more convenient to access, to buy, to use in one way or another, or it's got a brand or an image that you want to identify with, or that somehow you trust this brand more than the other brands that are out there. All right, so let's put this in a logic tree, or you think of it as a problem tree. So what's the source of the differentiation advantage? So we got product features, quality, reliability, more convenient to find, purchase, use, and brand image. All right, so it does a better job on existing features, more jobs, or a unique job. So I'm going to go up here, Michael, up in the corner. That's why I was looking at your hat today. So tell me, what does it mean? Give me examples of each of these three. Does a better job on existing features, does more jobs than other products, or does a unique job that nothing else does? What would you say would be an example of a product that does a better job on existing features?
On existing features, well, that was like the example of the vacuum.
Okay, vacuum, sucking better. Okay, we know we expect vacuums to suck. Okay, all right. So what about does more jobs?
The iPhone.
iPhone.
So with all the apps.
Okay, good. So iPhone succeeded early on because it could do more things than a traditional phone, although the majority of iPhone users actually admitted they thought it was actually a worse phone than the other phones on the marketplace as just a phone. But they liked it because it could do so many other things. Okay, and what about a unique job? Does something that others, products or services just don't do.
How about like a touch screen computer?
If you were the very first that had the touch screen computer, that would be unique. What else?
I just saw this commercial for in a few years a car is going to come out that can fly too. It's like an airplane. It's a nasty looking car, but it can fly. I would say that's a job.
You'd say that's it. That's pretty unique. Yeah, the car that could fly. Yeah, I've heard about these flying cars. Yes.
I think the example the text used was like Disneyland. it's not really a substitute, it would be for like.
Yeah, it is unique. Your experience at Disneyland is a completely unique experience, right? You can't go anywhere else and have lunch with the Disney princesses, as I'm sure most of you really want to do, right? But I took my daughter, 8-year-old daughter, and we had a good time having lunch with the Disney princesses, and I learned 2 things from that experience. Number one, that they can charge you $25 for a hamburger if you want to have lunch with Disney princesses. And the second thing is that at the time, my sons, I think, were 13 and 17, and they liked having lunch with the Disney princesses as much as my 8-year-old dad. So I think they were okay with that too. All right, do you have another? Yeah.
I was just going to say, I've heard about this new app, which is going to make it so people can trade stocks directly with no broker fees.
So it's going to be a new app, free.
Yeah.
It will be completely unique.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, and if you think about a lot of, this is the way pharmaceutical companies make their living, right? They create a unique drug, a unique product, they get a patent on it, and then they're the only product of their kind until the patent runs out. So, so there are products like that that'll do something that's completely unique. They often are protected by patent, and the examples we talked about, at least are described in the book, the text, are, the iPod originally did a much better job of portability than the Discman, right? So most of you are probably too young to remember the joys of jogging with the Discman, but it was not the best portable music experience because it wasn't really small and portable. So on that feature of being portable, iPod was better. And then, of course, we talk about Dyson, and you think about every company needs to provide service, right? But Nordstrom somehow differentiates on service. And there are these sort of legendary stories that they tell that actually, if you go look it up, they're true about, like the guy in Anchorage, Alaska, that took his tires back to Nordstrom, and Nordstrom doesn't sell tires, but the manager, to keep him happy, took the tires back. Okay, that's pretty good service when you're taking back a product that you don't even sell. And this gets known, and then apparently, if you dig deeper in the story, I guess there was a tire store that was there before. He knew where it had moved, so I think they just took him back for the guy and got reimbursed. But that's the kind of service you're talking about. Or there's another time where a customer left a bag of clothes, things that had been purchased at Nordstrom. It was near the store. An employee found it. It had an airline ticket in it. It's in the New York area, and so they jumped on their system, tried to find the customer's phone number, called the number, couldn't get it. But that employee then jumped in a vehicle and went to, because they saw what time the flight was going to leave from the ticket, took the bags, paged the person at the airport, and delivered the bags to them, right? And that's what you call customer service, right? That's the way you get written up in Business Week and other places, and that's the kind of thing they do training about. Is we want you to do things that are unexpected, and as we get into today's class a little bit more, I want you to think about a product that you think of as awesome, that you've experienced, and the first time you experienced this product or service, you're like, well, this is really awesome. And I want to get at what is it that makes a product or service really sort of awesome in the minds of the customer, because that's what's going to help get you a high Net Promoter Score. Yeah.
Is it the case that a lot of times people who are doing a better job, it seems like that's also fairly unique? Like, I feel like Nordstrom offering that customer service is also unique in that sense. And the same with Disneyland, you could argue that there are other people who offer like that theme park fun experience, like Universal or Six Flags. But Disneyland, not only do they have the unique one, but they're also better at doing it than the other people. Yeah,
so this is where the only way you can differentiate the two is that there's something protecting someone doing something that's unique, that it's trademark, it's patent, it's something that means nobody else can do it.
Okay.
the same way because of some sort of trademark or patent. So everybody could do what, it's not like you couldn't do what Nordstrom do. It's not like they have a trademark or a patent or something that prevents it. They just do it because of great training, right, and culture.
Okay.
So others could potentially do it. But nobody can actually put Mickey Mouse in their parks.
So that's the unique part.
That's the unique part. Is there something about it that's protected by intellectual property or others that makes it sort of impossible for someone else to actually imitate?
Okay.
And that's the only way you can distinguish the two, because otherwise it is unique, right? It's just not that it necessarily has to be unique. Others could do it, but they just don't. Yes?
When we're talking about like service, customer service, does that fall more into better quality and reliability, or does that fall into superior product?
Yeah, so when you think about, if we move to quality and reliability, and actually let's go through here and then we can talk about the distinction, because what you're asking, and you're trying to get this sort of careful sense of this is a categorization, right, a taxonomy. And the question is, are these really mutually exclusive and exhaustive, and how does that work? Because there really are not a lot of taxonomies out there around differentiation. And we've tried to create one that we think works. But a lot of times there's like these areas of sort of overlap where it seems like they're pretty similar. But we'll tell you how they're different. So does more jobs is the iPhone. I've got here the film, digital cameras. The reason that they beat 35 millimeter wasn't because of better picture quality at the beginning. The picture quality was worse, but it was the ease of being able to take a picture and see it. You didn't have to have the old Polaroid anymore to see your picture to know if it was good, and then it was just the ease with which you could send digital files. So it did more jobs. Eventually, it did catch up in terms of picture quality as well. And then the unique job I've got here, Disney does a fairly unique job. I think in many ways, Build-A-Bear, the way you build, certain bears that are unique to Build-A-Bear Workshop is also, fairly unique. Now let's move to quality, better reliability. So there are sort of slightly different definitions of quality. The way we're using it here is that you create a product or service, it's really a product that lasts longer. In other words, it doesn't do anything that's different necessarily in terms of having a feature that it does something that another product doesn't do, or it doesn't do more jobs. It doesn't necessarily do anything unique, it just lasts longer. So you could have a company that could clone, have the same body style as a Honda Civic, let's say. But if you had the two vehicles, the Civic would probably just last longer. And that's what we mean by quality and reliability. It's not really that it differentiates on any particular feature or job to be done. It does the same job, it just lasts longer, it just does it for longer. So it may be a subtle distinction, but we're trying to sort of distinguish between features that actually do something different for the customer, do a different job for the customer, and those that simply where it's just a reliability factor.
And at the beginning of like a company's life, so that's just established over time.
That's not established over time.
They didn't like establish themselves as, hey, we're going to last longer than.
That's right. That's right. It wasn't until Toyota and Honda had been in the U.S. car business for 20 years that people started realizing that they lasted longer. They went more miles. In fact, I just saw an advertisement last night. Volkswagen's advertisement, or now advertising, they have more cars on the road with more than 100,000 miles. Trying to pitch this, our cars are more reliable, they'll last longer, as a way to differentiate their product. And because companies will sometimes do that as a way to differentiate, it's not like they're trying to do something, our car does this or this or this that's different, it just lasts longer. All right, more convenient to find, purchase, or use. So this is thinking of convenience very broadly as an issue. We think of Starbucks and Coke as differentiating mainly on brand, right? I mean, you think about Starbucks and Coke. We did the Coke case. It's mainly brand, and I would think that I think that is true. However, think about and we're going to do a case on Starbucks on Wednesday. Starbucks if you're in downtown San Francisco or downtown Seattle, I mean, you gotta have a pretty poor arm to not be able to pick up a rock and throw it to the next Starbucks if you're standing at a Starbucks. They're so close. There's so many. They're so convenient that it's like if you needed coffee, it's not like you have to go hunt. There's a Starbucks that's really close within probably 2 blocks that you can walk to, and that just the convenience of being able to get it also is a differentiator in addition to the brand. And that's true for Coke and Pepsi. Their vending machine network is so extensive that a lot of times, we'll go grab something that's at the vending machine because that's what's convenient, right? And if it happens to be a Coke machine, then we'll take it's Coke, or if it's a Pepsi machine, we'll take a Pepsi or one of their, Pepsi beverages. But it's more convenient to find, or it's more convenient to purchase. So that's going to be another difference. It's just easier to buy. One-click shopping at Amazon has made it easier for people to sort of buy. They keep all your credit card information on file, so you just one click, you're done. You don't have to re-put things in. That's just more convenient. So there are a variety of ways that a product can be more convenient, either to buy, to find, or to use. It can be more convenient to use. Okay, yes?
What's the logic behind Starbucks having stores across the street from each other?
Let's save that, and I'll ask you that on Wednesday. All right? So think about that. Remind me to ask Sam about what you think the answer to that is on Wednesday. Yes?
Kind of going back to his question about Nordstrom and how we categorize it, is convenience to return the product?
Making it easy to return?
Yeah. Does it matter how we categorize it, as whether it's superior, better quality, convenience?
Or convenience? So convenience, this is where you could argue, Nordstrom's more convenient. That's part of their better service. So they do a better job on that existing feature of convenience. And so I think you could argue there's some overlap there in terms of, well, it's sort of, they do a better job on that existing feature of just being convenient. Yeah. But because there's so many different ways you can be convenient, I think it's important. A lot of times, when you're thinking about the reason I want to give you this typology, this way of thinking about it is, let's say you're sitting down, whether it's software or something else. You're working in product development, and you're asking yourself, how can we differentiate this product? What can we do that's different? And then what you could do is you could lay out and you can say, okay, what are the things that we think customers are looking for today? Could we do a better job on any of those? All right, are there other things we could add to our product so that it could do more jobs than competing products? Are there things that our product could do that others can't do? Let's look at that as an option. Is there something that we could trademark or we could patent to do something that's unique relative to everybody else? Right? Is there some way we could make our product more reliable than anybody else? The Energizer Bunny, it's all about reliability. It's not like the batteries, it's just like it lasts longer, right? So, but you can go through this, and then you get to convenience. You say, is there any way we could make it more convenient to find, purchase, to use? Or is there any way that we could create brand? And so it gives you a way to sort of systematically go through and think of ways that you could differentiate a product or service. Does that make sense? And that's why it's nice to have this kind of think of it as a taxonomy or a set of categories, because it gives you a way to sort of systematically go through and look for opportunities to differentiate a product or service. And then finally, there's brand image. And we normally think about it's interesting, there are different ways. We normally think about brand as prestige, luxury, right? So a lot of people think about, you hire Gucci or Versace or Prada or whatever it might be, because you're sort of identifying yourself with this sort of exclusive club, right? And the job to be done is much more emotional than it is functional, right? Now that maybe there are Prada diaper bags, but I don't know that there are. I think usually young couples with young kids are looking more for diaper bags that are functional, right? That meet certain functional requirements, as opposed to maybe the social emotional. Although I'm sure there probably are. There are. Yeah. So I'm sure there are all types, but people maybe tend to move towards the functional for some kinds of products, and others will move towards more of the emotional. So we tend to think of it as luxury, but it doesn't have to be luxury. Harley-Davidson's kind of luxury, but as we talked about it, it really is more to do with sort of this personal identity that has to do with sort of individualism and sort of a little bit of rebelliousness and Americana and so on. Jell-O, if you think about that brand, I mean, most of us actually, because certain products pioneer a product category, they have their name associated with the product category. So technically it's gelatin. We don't buy Jell-O. We buy gelatin, right? Jell-O is just the brand. And you can buy other kinds of gelatin, but because they were first and they pioneered it, same is true with like Kleenex. We think about buying Kleenexes instead of tissues. So sometimes you'll see that. And then Prius, I don't think you'd see as a prestige brand necessarily, but what do you think, would some people want to identify with Prius? Why? What's the...
Those that want to be environmentally conscious?
Yeah, it's like, this is I want to sort of demonstrate I'm environmentally conscious, and so I want to identify with that brand. So it could be a variety of different ways that you can connect with people. It doesn't have to be necessarily prestige. Those tend to be the primary ways that you differentiate. In order to be good at it, you typically have to understand customers' needs better than cost-based strategies. This typically requires doing customer segmentation analysis or doing consumption chain analysis. So, Brady, what are 3 different ways that you can segment customers? This was described in the chapter. There are 3 different ways that you can segment customers. There are probably more than that, but
yeah. Was it by like behavioral?
Okay, so you can think of it as behavioral. I'm going to put that into the category of you're trying to understand the circumstance they're in and the job that they have to get done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Was it by demographic?
Demographics would be a second.
Yeah. Trying to think what else we're calling that.
Think about what we did we did on the board with Honda and Harley Davidson. We were segmenting by, what were the things along the bottom? Features, product features. So a third way is product features. Okay, so if you did it by demographics, 50, you might take 50 to 70-year-olds, and you're going to have some 50 to 70-year-olds though that really might want to have very different features than other 50 to 70-year-olds. They might want some of the same features as a 20-year-old. Although directionally speaking, we expect 50 to 70-year-olds to behave more similarly to each other than we expect them to behave like 20 to 30-year-olds. So demographics is an easy way to do it. But when we think about different ways of segmenting, what we're trying to do is we're trying to group customers together who are similar in terms of what they want and need. And if we can group them together, then we can design products or services to meet the needs of that customer group, that segment. And that's a way to be successful. You don't have to be, you don't have to be successful with every segment out there, but it's basically you're trying to identify a profit and maximizing a profit and market share maximizing strategy. What you don't want to do is if you add features people don't care about, then you've essentially oversatisfied needs and there's a financial cost. You put in things in there, maybe certain segments that don't want that product. So you may want to have a bare bones product for a particular segment, and then you maybe want to have a more feature-rich product for a different segment. And you may have a different set of features altogether for a third different segment of the market. You don't want to oversatisfy needs because there's a financial cost, but you also don't want to undersatisfy needs because then there's a market share cost. Then you have many customers that won't choose your product or service. Okay. All right. So 3 different ways: features of the product, customer demographics, and the attributes of the circumstance and the job to be done. My experience, as I've looked at what we tend to teach in marketing, and I think it's generally true at BYU, but around the country, we tend to teach mostly about segmenting based upon customer features and customer demographics. Job to be done is a little bit different. It's a little bit newer as a way to think about it. This is a language that was described by Clayton Christensen. And if you think about a product like a drill, right? You don't really want a drill. What do you want? You want holes, right, of a certain size and type. You don't want an iron and an ironing board. What do you want? Wrinkle-free clothing, right? That's what you want. One of the nice things about defining something as a job to be done is if you're going in to try and innovate, and you're trying to come up with a better way to get wrinkle-free clothing, if you think you're trying to improve an iron and an ironing board, then you'll focus only on the features of an iron and ironing board. But there may be very different ways to create wrinkle-free clothing that could be much more innovative and better. So I think that's one of the helpful things about defining this broadly as the sort of job to be done. So what I want to do is I want to let you watch a short clip. This is Clayton Christensen. Since Clay's the one that sort of introduced this idea, I'll have him describe it to you. This is from an innovation course that he and Hal Gregerson and I created it was actually developed by IDEO, an innovation design firm. They were the ones that produced it. It was paid for by the Apollo Group that owns the University of Phoenix. We were working with a new division of theirs called Lightspeed, where they're trying to create some sort of new, cooler online learning products for corporations. So let's watch Clay talk about segmenting based upon the job to be done.
So here's Clay Christensen, 6'8", standing in front of you. I have all kinds of characteristics. But the fact that I am Clay Christensen and I have all of these characteristics, those characteristics don't cause me to go out and buy a product. So there might be a correlation between my characteristics and the propensity to buy this product or prefer that product over this one. But correlation is not causality. And what we really are trying to understand is what is it that causes customers to go out and find a product and pull it into their lives? Because if we can understand what causes people to buy a product and pull it into their lives, then you've solved innovation, because they then just have to develop products that they want to pull into their lives. So one of the big fast food restaurant chains in America decided that they needed to goose up the sales of their milkshakes. And these are very sophisticated marketers. So turns out that they have, for every item on the menu, they have a profile of the customers who like that product. And so they had a profile of the quintessential milkshake customers. It turns out that Clay Christensen fits the profile perfectly. So they would bring people like me into conference rooms and they'd ask them, could you tell us how we can improve the milkshakes so that you'll buy more of them? And we give them very clear input. They would improve the product on those dimensions of improvement, and it had no impact on sales or profits whatsoever. So we decided to take this different approach, and that is, we need to figure out what job are the customers trying to get done that causes them to go there and hire a milkshake. So one of my colleagues stood in a restaurant for 18 hours one day and just took very careful notes. What time did they buy the milkshake? What was he wearing? Was he alone? Did he buy other food with it? Did they eat it in the restaurant or go off with it? And it turned out that nearly half of the milkshakes were sold in the very early morning. They were always alone. It was the only thing they bought, and they all got in the car and drove off with it. So we decided the next day we positioned ourselves outside the restaurant so that we could confront these people when they were coming out with their milkshake in hand. In words that they could understand, we essentially said, excuse me, please, I got a big problem here. What in the world were you trying to do that caused you to come here at this early hour and hire a milkshake? Well, as they would struggle to answer the question, we try to help them by asking, well, think about the last time you were in the same situation, needing to get the same job done, but you didn't come here to hire this milkshake. What did you hire? And at the end of the day, we looked through our notes and realized that those who bought the milkshakes in the morning all had the same job to do. And that is, they had a long and boring drive to work. And they just needed something to do while they were driving to stay engaged and awake. They weren't hungry yet, but they knew they'd be hungry by 10 o'clock, so they also needed something that they could just eat and thunk down in their stomach and stay for the morning. Boy, that's a good question. What do I hire when I have this job to do? You know, I never thought of it in these terms, but last Friday I hired a banana to do the job. Take my word for it, never hire bananas. They're gone in just a couple of minutes. You're hungry by 7:30. Yeah, if you promise not to tell my wife, I hire donuts a lot, but geez, they don't do the job well either. You know, they crumb all over my clothes, it gets my fingers gooey. They're gone too fast. Yeah, I do bagels, but man, bagels are so dry and tasteless that I have to steer the car with my knees while I put in the cream cheese and jam. And then if the phone rings, I'm in big trouble. You know, once I hired a Snicker to do this job, but I felt so guilty I've never hired Snickers again. But let me tell you, when I come here and hire this milkshake, it is so viscous. It takes me 25 minutes to suck it up that thin little straw. You know, somebody gave me another hand, and there just isn't anything in it, because I just drive with one hand, and I needed something to fit in that other hand, and the milkshake fits in there perfectly. And once we understood what the job was that the customers were trying to do, then we realized that they had been improving the milkshake on dimensions of performance that was irrelevant to the job that they were trying to do. Well, then we had studied it for the whole day, and it turned out in the afternoon and the evening, it was hired for a fundamentally different job, primarily by fathers who have been saying no to their children all week long. And they've just been looking for something that they could say yes to so that they could feel like good fathers. It had nothing to do with the children. The parents need to feel like they were good fathers. And so I am at the counter with my son Spence. I order my meal, and then Spencer orders his meal. And then he looks at me and he says, "Dad, can I have a milkshake?" And I put my hand on his shoulder and I said, "Sure, Spence, you can have a milkshake." And I say that because I want to feel like I'm a nice father. Has nothing to do with his health or anything. So you watch what then happens. It's hired in the restaurant with other people with a meal. And Dad finishes his meal, and then Spence finishes his meal, and then he picks up that milkshake, and it is so viscous. It takes the kid forever to suck it up that thin little straw. You know, and I hired the milkshake so that I could be a nice father, and so I wait patiently for a while. And then he keeps sucking up that thin little straw, and then I wait impatiently for a while, and then I say, "Look, Spence, we don't have all night," and so we throw it away half consumed. Well, then the company brings me into their conference rooms because I fit the profile of the customers who buy milkshakes. And they'll say, "Well, Clay, can you tell us how we can improve the milkshake so you'll make more, but buy more of them?" What am I going to tell them? Because I hire it for two fundamentally different jobs to be done. And then when they average my response with all of the other 35 to 55-year-old male slobs with children, they come up with a one-size-fits-none product that doesn't do well either of the jobs that the customers are trying to get done. And that's the reason why the customer is the wrong unit of analysis You need to understand what causes them to buy the product. And understanding the job is the right unit of analysis.
Okay, so now that you know that, now that you have some sense of what the job to be done is, how might you change the product for the morning commuters? Yeah.
We used to do like a thin straw in the morning and a big straw in the evening.
Okay, so you could do different size straws,
Yeah.
depending on how long you want it to take. You could do a fatter straw for the evening. Yeah.
So you could have a thick shake, a thick milkshake in the morning, and then like a really thin, kind of more like Wendy's style in the afternoon.
Okay, so you could do, again, thinner, so you could do thinner, smaller shakes for the evening, the kid customers. Yes?
I think in the article he was talking about how they put the milkshake machine easily, for like easy access on the counter so that someone could do self-serve and then pay and leave.
Yeah, so they actually, this has become pretty popular in the last few years with the yogurt, different sort of yogurt shops where you go in and you get your own mix. But they put the milkshake machine out where people could then quickly get their own. They could do sort of unique, they could make something that's unique for each drive. And that way it would be unique each day, but they could also get it and a prepaid swipe card where they could get it quickly. Good, yes?
Some machines allow you to choose the thickness that you want in your shake. So some gas stations you go in and there's like a cup of milkshake and you put it into the machine, say like low thickness, high thickness, regular.
Yeah, so you actually could choose multiple different options on the thickness. Yeah.
I think the problem that he's bringing up also draws attention to the importance of having good packaging. So making sure the cup won't spill and that it's easy to hold.
Yeah, for the commuters, that's going to be really important.
I
Yeah.
think Tex talked about putting fruit in the shake, not necessarily because it'd be more healthy, but just because it's a little more exciting.
A little more exciting surprise, yeah, you can put different things in there. Yeah, and I'll tell you, for kids' shakes, I mean, I don't know, my kids, it's like, they want to put like all these horrible things, like gummies and sprinkles in the shake. They'd love to put that in shakes. Which I think most adults, really don't care for. But you could imagine having a variety of different kinds of things to put in a kid's shake that they might like that's very different. So the point is, when you understand a little bit more about the customer and what they're hiring the product for, then you can do a better job of innovating to meet their needs. Because you better understand the job to be done, what's causing them to pull it into their lives. Another technique you can use to try and help figure out ways to differentiate is map the consumption chain. So we think about the supply chain or the value-added chain is basically the series of steps that transform a product from raw materials into a final product that gets sold to the customer. So that's the value-added chain or the supply chain. For cost advantage, you've got to be really good at figuring out how do we make that as efficient as possible. For the customer chain, it's starting with the customer and basically going through these series of questions that take you through the consumption chain. The first step is becoming aware that you might even need a product or service, that you have a job to be done, that you need to hire something to help you to get a job done. Right? So very first step is how do they become aware? And then, well, how would I find it? If you might be able to differentiate on becoming just easier to find than the competition, even if you're not different on any particular features. It could be, it could be that you actually have a product that's differentiated on features. So this is how do they make their final selections? What's the priority of attributes? How do they order and purchase your product? Can you make that more convenient, easier? How's your product serviced or delivered? Again, can we make that easier, more convenient, less costly? Again, easier to pay for, easier to store or move around. Again, what is it actually used for? What do they want done? And what else do they use? Are there other things that they want to have with it that might be helpful? And then at the end of the day, how's the product repaired or serviced or disposed of? Can you make that easier? So there are a whole variety of different ways that you can think of differentiating a product or service that actually has nothing to do with the product itself. It has to do with, the steps that the consumer goes through to become aware of a product, to find it, to actually buy it, to take it where it needs to get used, and then what else it needs to get used with, and then even disposing it could be a differentiator. Yes?
Quick question about the job to be done. Was there any sales revenue growth in that particular case? When he differentiated?
When they
according to the job to
differentiated,
be
yeah,
done?
they said that they were able to see growth on both sides for both segments of the market because the product was tailored. And that was the key, is that you understood now there were two different segments. And so instead of having one type of milkshake for everybody, you now tailored it for the morning, one type of product for the morning segment, a different type of product for the evening segment. Yeah.
Because it seems like a problem that could be there is that the customers themselves don't even know the job that needs to be done.
Right.
And so like I could be that morning person, and now there could be a tailored milkshake for me, but I wouldn't even know the difference. I didn't know I wanted that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times, people don't really quite realize, oh yeah, I'm buying this shake because it keeps me awake. I got this long, boring commute. I don't want to get hungry, and they don't quite fully recognize what the job, that this is what they're hiring it for, and what the other substitutes might be, right? So now, if you know this, you could actually reach out to people, that are doing commutes, and advertise and try and let them know, hey, here you can come in, you can quickly get a shake, something to take on that commute. You get through quickly. It's a unique product. Come try it.
Cool.
And that allows you to that will likely attract more customers. Okay. All right. So then the essence of differentiation is to make choices that are different from those of rivals. So we're not, you're not trying to get to one ideal position. That you're actually trying to stake out a different position than rivals and offer a different value proposition. Successful differentiators create offerings that delight customers, where they think sort of, that was awesome. So I wanted to ask you, think about, and I don't know which products or services, it may have, if it was a product or service that you did for your Net Promoter Score assignment, that's great. If you didn't, any particular product, the first time you experienced it, you thought, this is pretty cool, this is really awesome? Yeah.
Five Guys.
What is it?
Five Guys.
Five Guys. So first time, that's a great burger.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Okay?
Friendly's has these waffle cheddar bacon fries that are like.
This is Friendly's back east?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I've never tried those. What are they called?
They're waffle cheddar bacon fries.
Waffle cheddar bacon fries. That is unique, and that was it's like, this is awesome.
They're like, yeah, the best fries
Okay.
I've ever had.
Okay. Very good. Any other products or you just
Blendtec blender.
Blendtec blender. First time you threw in all of that metal and it blended it up. You thought that was pretty cool. Yeah. Danny, good. Blendtec blender. Yeah.
So I purchased some hosting for WebThing, and they called me like an hour or 2 hours after I signed up to like make sure everything got taken care of, and I was like, that was
pretty cool.
That was really neat. That was a service version of what we're talking about.
Yeah. So what is it that fundamentally that makes a product or service come across to a customer as awesome? What do you think it is? Yeah.
I find that they tend to be more associated with experience brands. You like food sometimes, but like I find the food always has an environment to it, or there's some type of, either like it's a totally podunk place or like a super, glitzy place. So I don't know, like for example, as a missionary, like some of the best tacos in the world, like these podunk, little taco stands, and they were like the best thing in the world, and like the experience of being next to the dog was so cool. So like, I don't know, just the taco itself.
You
like,
take your bite, the dog takes his bite.
It was a process. It was a supply chain right there. But
okay. So it was, you go into this dive and you have this amazing food, and it's almost surprising, right? Yeah.
It just exceeds expectations.
Yeah. It fundamentally, we tend to think something's really awesome when it exceeds our expectations, when it does something that's unexpected. All right, so I'm going to, this is for everybody in here, but it's mostly for the guys because we don't tend to be as good at this. Right. If you want to get an awesome reaction from a girlfriend or a spouse, if you want to give a gift, you have to give it when it's unexpected. that's when you get the real kudos, right? Right? If you give a gift on the birthday, I mean, it's got to be something special that's unexpected on the birthday for it to really draw that really strong response. Because, hey, I expect a gift on my birthday. In fact, if you don't get a gift on your birthday, if you don't give a gift, then you're really in the doghouse, right? Because you didn't meet the expectations. To exceed the expectations, you have to give the gift when they're not expecting it, right? And then it's like, that's out of the blue. It's like, oh, it's just because, right? It's just because you're so wonderful. I wanted to give you this gift. Then it's a surprise, right? Or, and I noticed, some of the ladies in here sort of nodding. Yes, they get that. Okay, it goes both ways. But so it's true with products and services. When it does something, I think sometimes the dives, actually, you go in and the food is like so much better than you expected, or it's so good. It's like, wow, that is really good. When it's something that you try that you haven't, you haven't tried before, and it's really different and it's really good. Then of course you get that same sort of, oh, it's unexpectedly good. It exceeded my expectations. That's awesome. When something just sort of meets your expectations, then we don't tend to experience a product as really being awesome. And if you want to turn your customers into salespeople, you want them to have that awesome experience, right? Because that's when they'll go tell somebody, right? It's when you've had that great service experience, you'll tell somebody, hey, man, I had this really good experience. If you want, anybody who wants this, you should go try this. Or you want to go try a great taco or a great, bacon waffle fry thing, whatever that is. You have someone out there who is now promoting your product. And that is a great way to differentiate. Okay, so from my view, the sort of the underlying theory around how you really differentiate in a way that gets you a high net promoter score and really differentiates is you're trying to do something that's unexpectedly good. And that goes sort of beyond expectations. Yes?
Maybe you're going to get here, but I think it goes the opposite way too. If you go into certain expectations and those aren't met, like I'll tell people not to go watch a movie or something if I had expectations and they weren't met.
And they weren't, yeah.
Whereas if I just went in there with no expectations, I probably
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. Yes.
I was just going to ask if it's ever an effective strategy, instead of trying to make your product that much awesomer, if you try and lower their expectations.
Don't expect much.
I haven't seen that really used as a strategy. Don't expect much, and then when they come in, oh, that's pretty good. It was better than expected.
Just kind of going along with that, we did our research on iPhones and Galaxy phones, Samsung Galaxy phones, and the main reason that detractors gave for not being happy with their iPhone was a lack of new innovation. And so I just thought it was interesting that their expectation of like innovation in future products was detracting from how they saw their current product.
Yeah. So what was your net promoter score for iPhone?
So our net promoter score was 60 for iPhone, 62%.
62%?
Yeah.
Net promoter score. And what was your net promoter score for the Galaxy?
It was 48.
48? So 62 to 48. So iPhone still had a higher net promoter score. But for those that weren't as excited about iPhone, it's like you expect iPhone to still be the technological leader.
Yeah.
And when all of a sudden they started having things that iPhone didn't, it was like disappointing for Apple lovers, because it's like, wait, our product's always supposed to have the coolest new things. It shouldn't be coming from someone else. And that actually, we've seen iPhone dropping. What other products or services did you do net promoter scores on that someone would share what you learned? What were the others? Did you? Yes?
We did Canon and Nikon cameras.
Canon and Nikon cameras? Okay. And what did you find? Which one had the better net promoter score?
Canon, but only slightly. So Canon was about 53, and Nikon was about 50.
53 to 50? So that's a statistical, yeah, basically pretty similar. Not one or the other is really differentiating relative to one versus the other. And that's one of the things a net promoter score can tell you. One is it tells you sort of the level overall, but also relative to competition. Are we really different or are we not? And in this case, Canon, people are out there, Canon, Nikon, they're about the same, right? They're not, yeah.
We had one with a pretty big difference. We did Pandora and Spotify.
Oh, okay.
And, Spotify had like 7% net promoter score, and Pandora had like 5%.
Really? And what was driving the big difference?
What was interesting on the promoters of Pandora, the thing that they said the reason they would recommend it is because it was free or because of the price was a lot higher than that with Spotify. And so from that, I kind of concluded that there weren't a lot of other good things about Pandora that made its users want to recommend it. Whereas with Spotify, their big differentiator was the ability to pick your own songs instead of just having to listen to the radio.
Got it. So right now, if you, and this is where you can do early market research. It's like right now, if you had to buy stock in one of those two, you'd probably say Spotify probably has more potential right now because they're turning more people into promoters of their product, which is going to lead to more growth.
Yeah, they have huge growth percentages. In 1 year, they had like 3,000% growth.
Interesting. Is Spotify becoming pretty popular among? Yeah. Okay. Interesting. All right. What about Apple? So Apple has announced their own free music. What about Apple? Is Apple doing well in that space? Yeah. Is it iTunes Radio?
Yeah. It's pretty cool because their lists, they're like top 100.
So that would be an interesting one to compare to. Any other examples? Products that you looked at? Different? Yeah.
We kind of looked at Apple and Microsoft.
Just as the sort of companies?
Companies, I think you look operating systems as
well. Operating systems.
What they provide. And we got a net promoter score.
44 for Apple, and then like 0 for Microsoft.
No radio show.
Yeah, because there are a lot of detractors.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, people that like it, but there are a lot of detractors as well.
We actually have the exact same, but ours was 34 for Apple and 27 for
Microsoft. So Apple wasn't as far ahead.
And the interesting thing about that is the main reason people use Windows is because it's familiar, it's what they grew up with. And that was like the top one. Even though people liked Apple's operating system better, it's just the first mover, they were there and people know it.
Yeah. So one of the things I think that we learned around differentiation is delight and awesome products tend to come from doing something that's unexpected. It tends to be a pretty good predictor of growth, and Net Promoter Score is used at a lot of companies today. So I would suspect that probably half of the larger companies today in the U.S. use Net Promoter Score in some way or another to measure whether or not they're doing a good job of satisfying customers.
One thing, I'm not sure if this is like something that kind of ties into this, but one thing that I kind of have to face when I go into work is Wells Fargo, Chase, Target, they all have scales that are usually on 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. And Gallup will call up Wells Fargo customers after you leave the bank and ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, how did you feel like the employee met all these metrics? Because I don't know if they did the same analysis or what that is, but they basically, you have to get a 10 out of 10 in order to get credit for it in the store. And they also give you, like if you get a 9 on any of those 5 metrics, you get a 0. And they basically look at the percentage inside the store and they say, okay, what was the customer satisfaction for the quarter? And they'll bonus you based on that. But it looks like it's almost kind of the same idea if it's a scale of 1 to 10 that kind of determines whether or not people are really net promoters, like you gave them, that was awesome.
That's a great experience. And you're only getting credit if you get 10s, not even 9s.
Not even 9s. You have to get straight 10s across the board.
Okay. This is great inflation. Expecting even more, some places.
So in the One Number You Need to Grow article, they talked about how the Net Promoter Score offers a really simplistic, much cheaper, and more effective way to view here's customer satisfaction and here's how it's impacting your growth. Is there any downsides that Net Promoter Scores has when compared to the traditional customer satisfaction metrics?
I think Net Promoter Score is caught on because it is easy to understand and it's pretty easy to implement. So I think that's why we're seeing it being used a lot, is that people sort of, okay, I understand it, and it's easy to gather that information and easy to use. I think we find it tends to be better, it's more effective with consumer products than industrial products. and there are more sophisticated ways to try and get at, I think, the satisfaction with some industrial products. The one thing I added to your assignment that you don't see with a typical Net Promoter Score is now look at your detractors and your promoters and try and understand the primary reasons that they're promoters or detractors. I think that's actually, I think you want to know more than just my Net Promoter Score. I want to know why people are promoting and why people are detracting. Because then it gives me an idea for where I want to continue to invest and where, and what I need to fix. So my recommendation to you is to, if you ever are in a situation where you want to use the Net Promoter Score, I would add that wrinkle to it, because it's just going to give you more information around why people are detractors and why they're promoters. All right. And by the way, differences in positioning are necessary but not sufficient to create competitive advantage. Jared, why?
Because, so you're talking about differences in positioning like with Net Promoter Score?
Yeah, or product differences in, a different value proposition are maybe necessary to differentiate but not sufficient for competitive advantage.
Like would this be a similar thing like with Walmart? They offer the same kind of products and a similar type of thing to other low-cost grocery stores, but they've saturated the market that they're in. There's no place chance to get into it.
The key is you've got to have a barrier to imitation. If you differentiate on a feature and others can differentiate as well, if they can copy you, then it's not sustainable. So what you're trying to do is find areas where it's not only it's not only something that's different, but it's sustainable because you've created a barrier to imitation. It's hard for others to imitate.
What an
Yes?
example of this, maybe not what you just said, but it's like if we looked at Harley Davidson, like they have their barriers to entry, but they're really bad at actually producing a motorcycle. Would that be another example of positioning is important, but not everything?
Yeah. In some ways, although at least their brand itself is quite unique. But if we think about like Pandora came out, it was different, right? It was something that was unique, it was something that was different. But now it's been imitated, now it's been imitated. Spotify apparently has gone beyond in providing things that people like even better. The iTunes radio. So you can do something different, but just remember, if others can imitate you pretty quickly, you lose your source of competitive advantage really fast. All right, good. We will see you on Wednesday.